So welcome everybody. This is a very informal webinar of sorts, really just intended to share information about what things to keep in mind when you're thinking about submitting a proposal for the annual meeting for, in the case of this meeting, posters and panels and alternative events. Sorry we had to do this as two separate meetings, but we couldn't coordinate time zones for everybody and get everyone on one call. So as I think you all know, the annual meeting will take place in Salt Lake City in October. That is our intent. However, we recognize that the world will still be an unusual place in October. So we are going to be doing this as a hybrid meeting, both in person, face-to-face, as well as online. So if anybody out there is interested in presenting at the annual meeting but doesn't think they'll be able to travel to it, that's okay. We will have ways to accommodate remote presenters as well as in-person presenters. So on our call today, I haven't seen Jim Jansen jump on yet, so we are expecting him, but he's the program committee chair for the overall annual meeting program. And then we do have with us on the call today our co-chairs for panels and alternative events, and one of our co-chairs. I didn't see Ting Ting, but Anwar is here. So they will each be giving a brief presentation on what they're looking for and their recommendations for submitting to their specific tracks. And then we'll open it up for questions and answers for anybody that might want more information. I'll just briefly touch on the meeting theme: equity, diversity, inclusion, justice, and relevance. That's a lot of options there for you to talk about in your presentations, if you so wish. We are not requiring that proposals address the meeting theme, but we are encouraging folks to address the meeting theme in their proposal if they can and if they wish to. So you can read this online, it's on our website, but this is a sort of lengthy description of what is in mind with the theme. So again, not a requirement that you tie your session to the theme if you're proposing one, but that is strongly encouraged, and hopefully we'll get enough sessions relevant to the theme to have a meaningful exploration of the topic in the meeting. And that is all I wanted to tell you as an introduction. So I'm going to stop sharing and ask Wen, do you want to launch us off? And John Jen, I think you have slides, so I will turn it over to you. Take it away.
All right. Let me share my screen first. All right. Thank you for the introduction, Lydia, and also I want to say thank you for your Lydia and Kathy's great efforts to put on all this like a panel for the panel and alternative events first. So I guess I just be like you just said, it's a very informal panel or webinar. So if everyone has any questions during our presentation, you can jump in and shoot me a question anytime. Okay. Okay. I think I can I think I can be the representative first to introduce my colleagues from University of Tennessee, Jiangen He, and myself. I let him introduce himself later after we get this talk. So my name is Wen. I'm from East China Normal University in Shanghai, and I'm an associate professor right now. And here are our contact information. If anyone has any question related to ASIS or any other interest on our academic research, we can get acquainted. Jiangen, you want to jump in to talk about yourself a little here?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Wen. Hi, I'm Jiangen He. I am assistant professor at University of Tennessee in our Department of Information Sciences. Welcome to this webinar.
All right. So I go ahead, start our main topic. I think we're gonna go through this context one by one, around 20 minutes or less or something. I'll talk about the history of ASIS, let's put in a short way, PAE track. And then Jiangen will give you a brief introduction about the format of a PAE and the essential component and the review criteria. So I think everyone probably cares the most is the accept rate of our panel. And what is a panel and alternative event will be discussed by Jinggen later. And so we pulled out the stats since 2014. A great news is that the accept rate in panel and in PAE track is really, really high. At least it has been very high. I think, as I can recall, the paper acceptance rate is around 20% or somehow 30%, if I can recall. But I would encourage all the academics, researchers to propose their research on the PAE track if you prefer. So I guess we don't really have a limit on the submission and accepted submission, but it depends on I think it's overall depends on the total submission. That's the thing. And then we conducted a very simple text analysis on the topics of every past 4 years PAE track in the history. Of course, information and research when information science can be very stand out here. Also, if we look into the topics one by one from those PAE titles, we can see the difference different in different years. Let's take a look on 2017 in Crystal City, Virginia. I think the theme of that year is about let's say the human and the technology or human and information engagement. So except for information and science and research or data or anything, we can also see behavior engaging, marginalizing, all this related to theme topics. And then 2018 is probably the same. We can 2018 focus on building and sustaining an ethnic future with emerging technology. So we can see the learning consequences and the ethical can jump out from the topics. And then 2019 will be focused on everything, everyone, and anytime. So basically, we can tell from all the PAE tracks from the title, they include education, they include practice, they include data. This actually attracted me a lot. Why is data not data? We can probably look into it some other time. But I would like to ask some of our participants what would happen in 2020. I get when I was pulling out the map, I expected this. I expected COVID. I expected pandemic. I guess it's also because our situation here is because our the theme at that year can be very predictive. Like it's associated with the grand challenge. So we have pandemic, COVID, and other type of other relative topics. What I'm saying here is to make a conclusion, say if your topics can be inclusive on our conference thing, it might have a higher possibility to get you included in our conference. So in 2021, as Lydia said, we pretty much include all the topics in information science. Our administration finalized this thing as the adequacy, diversity, inclusion, justice, and relevance. So you can like break it down as into the theoretical approach or any practice approach or anything into our PAE track. All right. There's another thing I want to mention about PAE is it's a special. It's it's a signature. I think this what's the difference between a PAE track versus from paper track or poster or something is the interactive signature. We pulled out the authors, the total numbers of authors, or the stats on authors. It's more like attract me is the average author is, I think, is a bit higher than other tracks in ASIS conference or other kinds of papers or publications. Like you can see, basically, for the past 4 years, the maximum number of co-authors can be as high as 9 co-authors in a PAE track. So I guess is the reason by interaction. All right, since the history can be related to some of our accepted submissions, we randomly picked 2 submission here. Wanted to show how things done in PAE track. So we don't really have a format this year, but last year's submission, let's say this submission was from 2019 in Melbourne. These 4 researchers are contacted from 4 different kind of institutions, and the format is still listed by title, of course, and then their institutions and their names, and abstract. These are very traditional styles. However, I would like to address here is so that's their 4 ways of their own topics. I'd like to address here is their interaction section. It's probably better to zoom in, huh? So they made it very clear to say how they will contact the panel during the panel. Sorry. They said what they're gonna use, how they're gonna deal with it, who's gonna be the monitor, etc. I guess that's a bit of difference from paper and other tracks. However, last year was a big challenge for panel and alternative events. So last year, I pulled out this submission as an example to see how they conducted this event. It's basically an online roundtable. They're talking about what's the open data access procedure during the COVID-19 problem. And then their agenda suggests which each panelist would provide their ideas about this topic. So I guess that's one of the other way also. But all of those both of the examples are just just give you an idea how to organize a panel. Other formats are very, I mean, any kinds of formats are acceptable for us. I mean, at least for me and Jiangen here. But Jiangen will talk about other kinds of formats right now. Okay, I'll leave this to you. Is this okay?
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, now I will talk a little bit about the formats of panels and alternative events. You have like two options. You can organize conventional panels, and you also can figure out alternative events. You have multiple options for organizing an alternative event. For panel discussion, it is always about a specific topic. It is well defined and in a specific scope so that we can have a more effective discussion about a specific topic. And for a panel, we always have a moderator who is responsible for organizing their event and control their panel discussion agenda. And we may also see a group of panelists. And we look forward to see panel discussion with a group of panelists with different perspectives. We would like to address diversity over here very much. And we also look forward a large group of audiences to participating in each panel discussion. And for panel discussion, we don't specify the structure over here. You are free to either organize like a set of presentation then leads to interactive discussion, or you are also free to organize several questions to discuss within panelists and audiences. But interactive is very important feature for being for having a successful panel. And for okay, actually,
sorry.
yeah, sorry.
We need some coordination.
Yeah, sorry. For alternative events, you can choose several different formats, like such as ground table, fishbowl, storytelling, or you can host a demo and exhibition session for a specific topic. But you're also free to figure out some creative structure to organize a lively discussion about specific topic. But if you are using some new format for this kind of event, but you may need to specify and describe clearly about the event agenda and structure, so that we can evaluate if it is effective to attract large group of audiences and if it is effective to have a good discussion in the topic. Next, please. Next, I would like to talk about the essential components of proposal submission. The length of proposal submission should within 4 pages, not including references. Within this 4-page submission, we would like to see 3 essential components. At first, you need to present a topic you would like to discuss. For this topic, you can describe the background and the scope of this topic. And next, you may address the importance of this topic, why it was discussing during our annual meeting and why it is important to our community. And next, you can address the potential contribution and the implication to our community that can brought by this discussion in your event. Next, you can you have to include information about the panelist or presenter and the organizer information. We would like to address diversity over here. And we would like to see intellectually and culturally diverse team for your event. We would like to see domain experts from different areas so that it can bring different perspective and different view of points to the discussion. And we also like to see a culturally diverse team in the team, so that we can have a very we can attract more audiences, and we can have more representative voice in the discussion. And the next, you can include the detailed organization plan. You can specify the structure, the format, or agenda of your event. And we are like you can address how you gonna promote the lively discussion and the interaction during your event. And for this year, it is special. As Lydia mentioned, we're gonna have a hybrid conference. So you may need to address how it can be like very interactive for both face-to-face audiences and online audiences. Okay, next, thank you. Next, I would like to briefly talk about the review criteria. There are four major criterion we would like to address over here. At first, we expect a cohesive thing likely to promote lively discussion during our annual meeting, and we also like to see valuable and the interesting contribution to areas represented by ASIS&T community. Next, we would like to see proposal with clear, feasible, and well-organized session plan that emphasizes audience interaction. As I mentioned, we would like to see how you address to improve their audience from face-to-face audiences as well as online audience to interact with panelists and other audiences during your panel and alternative events. And we are also expecting some appropriate levels of diversity in presenters who will contribute unique perspectives and their content to the session. Next. Based on the review criteria, we have 5 categories of reviews. Reviewers gonna evaluate from these 5 aspects, and they are quality of submission, and the clarity of the proposal, engagement, and their qualifications of presenters, and their implication for research, for practice, for education in for our community. And you can see the percentage for these 5 categories over here. At last, I would like to mention the important days. Our submission is due on April 19. We will send our notification by May 24th, and the camera ready version is due on June 7th. And here are 2 important links. You can find more details about the submission types and the submission instructions. Okay, thank you. And if you have any question right now, we are happy to answer. And if you have any question after this meeting, you can always reach out to us. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm gonna stop right here. Yeah. And Lydia, should we waiting for answers now or after our finish?
Yeah, I think we can take questions now if there are any. Yeah. A couple of things I wanted to make note of, and I think you guys have addressed this really well. The panels are really intended to be a discussion among a group of people about a topic, as opposed to a group of papers strung together. That's what the paper track is for. So really give some thought to how the interaction between panelists and then between the panelists and the audience will enhance the session. That's one thing. The second is, as I'm sure you're all aware now, everybody that presents at the annual meeting is expected to register for the annual meeting. This most often becomes a problem with panels, typically, where folks invite people to be on a panel and they don't understand that they need to register for the meeting. If you have somebody you want to invite to the meeting that is, for example, local to Salt Lake City, and you think they would add a lot, but they would not otherwise in any circumstance attend our meeting, let us know about that in advance so we can make a determination of whether or not we could allow participation just in the panel and not in anything else. But as a general rule, anybody that presents at the meeting does need to register. So keep that in mind when you're considering your panelists, and make sure that your panelists are aware of that before they accept the invitation. I think that covers the couple of points that I wanted to add. Let's see, Kathy's just popped something in here. Oh, just whether or not you have questions. So anybody that has questions, feel free to just pop on your audio and ask it, or put it in the chat.
I have a question. Yeah, I'm Fang from Nankai University, China. Yeah, 我看到华东师大的楼老师啊，楼文 ，Yeah.
Nice meeting you. Nice
Do you
meeting
have
you.
any samples of panel suggestions?
Oh, you mean specific
Sample
ones?
就是一个样本 sample.
Oh wait, you mean the one I showed earlier?
Oh yeah, just now you showed 2 samples of the panel suggestion.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Okay.
I put one from 2012,
Yeah.
2019, and then one 2000.
Yeah, that one is from Melbourne, university you just said.
Mm-hmm.
And Queensland, yes.
The second one?
This is a panel. Is this a panel?
Yeah, this is a panel submission.
Okay, submission. Oh, abstract. Okay. And
Yeah. And then keywords. I think those are just essential components or so, but I mean, we don't really have to follow the specific section on your panel if you're interested. But I guess what Jiangen just mentioned for the essential panel, essential component are more important for us.
Okay.
But I guess these are conventional for every kind of academic research paper.
Yeah, you can just like you don't have to follow the sections of these 2 examples. You just need to specify clearly about your topic, the background, the scope, the importance of the topic, and after that you can you need to include the information about the panelist. And after that, you need to have a detailed organization plan about the event agenda in your proposal. And these are the 3 essential components in your proposal. And you can specify in these 3 parts. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you for your interest.
Yeah. Another question is the conference place is Utah State, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I hope that we have a opportunity to take part in offline. Okay.
That's true.
Yes, we're hopeful that we'll be able to have a good number of people in person, but we recognize that that's not going to be an option for everybody. And I think the reality of the world today is, and going forward, is that we will always need to provide a virtual option for participation and engagement. It won't be the same experience as being there in person, but we will try to make it as excellent as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on papers and panels? I'm sorry, on panels and alternative events before we move on to the posters?
Okay, except panels, just like other, for example, workshop or other things. Are there any? Yeah.
So the difference between a panel and a workshop is really that the panel presentation is, first of all, it's an hour and 30 minutes long as opposed to a workshop, which is either a half a day or a full day. But the workshops are really intended to be, they're variable, but they're really intended to be sort of either an opportunity for a SIG, for example, to engage its members in putting on what it comes out to be really a research symposium on work being done in a specific area within that special interest group, or a sort of a deep dive into a skill or a technique that somebody has identified. Whereas a panel is intended to be more of a discussion between experts on a topic that can fit into an hour and 30 minutes as opposed to a half a day.
Okay, thank you.
And I have just one question, Jane and Wynn. So the number of authors in the panel, like 3, 4, or 5. So from that author, someone will be moderate, or any outside person will come and moderate the panels and all those things. Someone take the lead from the authors panel for conduct the sessions, like, yeah?
Yes, they are the panelists in the submissions.
And someone will conduct like the question and answer sessions for all this from the audience side even.
Yeah, one of the panelists presenters should be the moderator.
Yeah, that's all.
We'll identify that along the way. But I think CompTool provides the space to basically say the lead presenter will be whoever the moderator is.
Okay.
All right, well, why don't we move on to posters, and then if there are more questions about panels and alternative events after the poster presentation, then we can address those. So Anwar's camera, or Anwar's internet's a little sketchy, so he's leaving his camera off.
Yeah.
All right, take it away.
So is it okay? You can see that now?
Sure can.
Okay. So thank you. Like good morning, good evening, and good night from Dhaka, Bangladesh. It's like 9 or like 8 p.m. here. So I was really amazed to see my like earlier presentations, the speaker, the way they did compile all the useful information. It was so nicely organized. Now I feel kind of like blank because the way I made it, it's like I merely put some information about the poster things. Anyway, so thank you, Lydia and Kathy, for like organizing such a wonderful, I should say, rehearsal kind of things for the audiences, and even for the presenters who aim for presenting in the ASIS. So ASIS is such an organization, like in the history of like, they have a long history, 84 years, which is like great for an associations. Anyway, I'm not going to take more time. It's all about like how to submit an ASIS annual meeting poster. Probably the shortest version of write-up for the ASIS annual meeting. So me, Muhammad Anwarul Islam, I'm an associate professor in the Department of Information Science and Library Management, University of Dhaka, and I'm from Bangladesh. And my co-chairs like Professor Ting Ting Jian from Wuhan University, China. She might apologize due to her like preset schedule. She's not joining here. She said, I'm going to carry on what you can for a while for this moment. So welcome to you for this poster sessions. So this is the 84th annual meeting of the Association for Information Science and Technology, and the theme of this conference rightly address like the information, equity, diversity, inclusion, justice, and relevance. So we all know like how the pandemic has halted our life in many ways. We are like isolated but connected through the technology and through the blazing of technology and all those things. So I'm sure that the 84th annual meeting will shed light on the technology and information things for the society or across the world. So this is how like our poster sessions or the other paper session has been assigned. These are this list falls like the archives and data curation and preservations. This is basically from the archival science, the presenter who are working on the archives and digital curation things, they could think of to submit their paper here. This is all about like the data science, analytics, visualizations, and all those things. And usually like the domain specific informatics, human computer interactions, information theory. I think this is the like heart of information science associations, like information theory and kind of things. And then from where we are like library and information science, privacy and ethics. And for each topics had some like expansion with so many specific areas. So if you are on those areas, not limited to this, but feel free to submit your paper or kind of works you have in your baggage. So in the poster, basically what we expect. In the poster, we do not expect a lot of things like 8 to 10 pages, like 4 pages or 5 pages. We really want like what you have progressed so far in a short way, in a quickest way, the kind of snapshot you have for the audience, you can think of that. So if you have a kind of paper like research in progress, then you could think of like this is each a platform for you. We are looking for you to get your paper, to review your paper. And definitely not all the poster only. For all sort of paper submission, you should have to have the originality of the idea. If you have it, if you have an idea which is original, then we can think of to submit your poster here. So it should be like promising and potential breakthrough, late breaking result that we call like aha moment. In your research, if you find something like kind of serendipitous thing, please feel free to submit your paper here. This kind of lead breaking result we really expect in the poster sessions, so that the audience could have a quick look and can gauge what is going on your research. Or if you claim that like if you somehow discovered a new method or your team made a new method that like changes a lot in the society, or kind of device that you made, you could think of to submit your paper as a poster categories. And for the poster, for the poster, what is obvious is that like less is more. We usually prefer the less word, the less sentence, and the less things, because it is all about poster that relates to the visualization things rather than less text. So poster should not look like a primary research article kind of things. So if you have a kind of like tiny piece of all those things, you can consider it for a poster submission for the assistants. And before submitting these posters, you could expect these 3 questions from your side. If you aim to submit your poster, like what is the most important, interesting, and astonishing finding from my research project? If you have a research project and you found something interesting that relates with the earlier points, that are the questions here. We just try to rationalize. How can I visually share my research with conference attendees? What kind of information can I convey during my talk that will complement my poster? So in the poster session, the most interesting and amazing part always seems to me like kind of interaction, chit chat with the audiences, having a cup of coffee, standing in front of a poster. You wait for the audiences. They keep come and asking questions, and the session is going on. This is how the new things keep coming. But as I say it like Lydia, this time probably it will be like the hybrid things, at least not like the 2020 things, which was completely virtual. So we hope this time at least few of the participants will get the experience in person to attend 21 meetings in Utah. So these are the following sections basically that we recommend for a rough guide for the posters. If you are planning for submitting a poster for these things, you can consider these are the, what should I say, like thematic structure of a research things. Like the title, we expect here from your side like a short abstract, under 2 pages, a short abstract, and then introductions, then methods, then results, and then conclusions and acknowledgements. It is not necessarily, if you think that you plan to add something in the acknowledgement part, then you can put something here, and the references things. So this is how these sections basically are structured for the poster things. And what I usually find due to like time limitations, like what we consider for reviewing a poster, in that sense, we got this kind of scale, grading scale that we consider for reviewing the posters. So for reviewing the poster, we do consider like the scope, and then the quality of the submissions, then the presentation quality, then perceived impact. What is the impact it has for the community kind of things, and confidence to the reviewers, and overall recommendations. And each category have some like percentage, which is up to 100%. So based on that category, finally we scored the overall recommendations for ranking or grading a poster for the conference kind of things. And for the poster guidelines, we usually say like all poster must be blinded and do not complete the author sections for your submissions. You will add this when you submit your final version after acceptance notifications. This is quite obvious. Like the first submission, it should be blinded. You shouldn't like add the author information over there. And then once the paper is accepted, that time you can add the author information. And the poster limit is like 2 pages. It is all about 2 pages that you have to put your every ideas, your every put and all those things. And definitely you should follow the annual meeting 21 proposal templates, and you should set the file as like the author's name, last name, first initial, like example is like the Brown and the like those things. And for the poster annual submission side is open. All submission must be submitted here. The instructions are over there. And for the poster and the template, everything are categorized and updated nicely on the website. You can have a look on that. And the kind of like acceptance rate we have for the last few years, it was like in 2020, number of paper was like 116, and the acceptance rate was like 99%, and then 88% rate was the acceptance rate. This is like following things. So for the poster submissions, the kind of experience I had, if you like the very interesting part of the poster thing that I had the experience, like since 2015, I did submit my first poster in ASIS. It was basically a full-fledged paper. So it went through like once or twice round of fighting with the reviewer, and then finally it got rejections. So what it did, we pull all the reviewers' comment and improve the paper, and then it submit the papers to the poster categories, and finally it got accepted. So even if you have a paper, it got rejections to the full paper or short paper categories, you can address the reviewer comments, and based on that, you can redesign, you can revise the paper, and can submit to the poster things. So the poster submission, yeah, the deadline is like 9th of June, and the notification is 7th of July, and the camera ready version is 28th July. So good luck for the audience of you who are planning to submit a poster in the ASIS. Yeah, and that's all from my side, Lydia.
All right, thank you, Anwar, that was great. So I would just add that posters are a good avenue. If you submit a paper and it's not accepted, you can resubmit as a poster. Sometimes you'll be invited to do that, but even if you're not invited to resubmit as a poster, it's a totally different set of reviewers, a totally different set of criteria when people are looking at posters versus papers. So your chances of getting accepted are pretty good. We haven't yet really tackled the issue of how we're going to handle posters in a virtual environment. That's on the to-do list. Last year, of course, we had an online platform. This year, we might do a combination of an online platform and posters on poster boards for the in-person folks, but we want to make sure that the in-person posters can also be seen online. So we will figure all of that out. Again, though, if you're a poster presenter, you have to register for the annual meeting, so that's a consideration. And there was something else I wanted to say. Oh, in terms of acceptance rate, we've typically been limited in the past by the number of posters we could accept, by the number of posters we could fit into the space. And since space may not be a consideration this year, that does open up opportunities for us to accept more posters. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about submitting, that our acceptance rate could be, our total number of posters accepted could be higher if we're doing both virtual and in person, because we have a greater capacity to take more. So that, I think, is everything I wanted to say about posters. Any questions on that, or absolutely anything else you might want to ask at this point?
And this is the like sample of a poster that we did present in the last year, understanding and fighting disinformation and fake news towards an information behavior framework. So this is the author information and the abstract here, and this is the keywords and kind of things. So earlier it was like in 3 pages, but this year they did reduce just like in 2 pages. So this is how a poster looks like to submit for the annual meetings.
And I would add, if memory serves, for all of these, it's 2 or 4 pages plus references. So your references don't have to fit on your, it's really 2 content pages plus your references. Any other questions?
Yes, yeah, I have a question about the length of the literature review. You know, do we need a literature review as a part of the poster?
Usually, if what we suggest, like usually you need not to have a like literature review section for a poster. If possible, you could cover it under the like introduction or the background of the study part areas. Because for having a literature review, it takes a lot of spaces. So in 2 pages, it's quite like difficult. So it's need not to have a literature review concretely. But if you want, you can have a short kind of things. But having a literature review like under this section, writing something, it's not necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Anything else? Okay, well, I think everybody's gotten their questions answered. Feel free at any point to email either the co-chairs for the track that you're interested in, or if you're not sure who to email, then send an email to meetings@asis.org, and we can answer any of your questions. It helps us greatly. The earlier you submit, we typically get, I say 95% of our submissions in the 24 hours preceding the deadline. But if you think you can have it ready sooner, that makes our lives a bit easier, just to make sure that we can review everything. One thing we check very carefully for, as Anwar mentioned, was blinding. So obviously panels should not be blinded because we want to know who the presenters are, but posters and papers should be blinded. So your first submission, the PDF file, should not include author information. That's probably what we see most frequently that we have to send it back for. But if there aren't any more questions, then I think we can close down this meeting. Hopefully we'll see some of you on our meeting in 12 hours where we talk about papers. But if you can't get on that one, we're recording both sessions and we will pop them on our website as soon as they've been converted over. Okay? All right, everybody, thanks very much for coming and have a great day or night, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you, Lydia.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cassie. Bye-bye.
Okay, so I'm going to share the screen.
Great.
Can you all see okay?
That's perfect.
Okay. So should I start?
Yes, go ahead and start and introduce yourself, and it's all set to record. It is recording, so yeah, I think we're ready to go.
Okay, sounds good. So this short presentation is about instructions related to how to submit a paper to ASIS&T conference this year. And here we have Professor Annie Chen from University of Washington, and me. I'm Lu Xiao, faculty member at Syracuse University. And so the two of us are the paper co-chairs this year, and I'll get started. So some of the things that we want to touch upon today are the list of the topics that are covered by the conference and submission instructions, expectations that are related to the two paper submission categories, long paper and short paper. And we will also talk about the evaluation criteria for accepting a paper for both categories. And then we have some statistics that shows past year's acceptance rate. So I'm going to start by talking about the topics that are covered by the conference. So here is actually a list of topics that we obtained from the website, and the web URL is provided at the end of the slide, and you can see that. And as you can see, we pretty much have a wide range of topics covered, from the archives, data curation, preservation, to data science, to information theory, and to technology, culture, and society. The website provides detailed description of each topic, and some topics may also have additional subtopics. So if you're not sure whether your paper is in the right scope in terms of the topics, I would suggest you go to this website and check it out. And in terms of the long paper submission, for the long paper, we expect that the papers may talk about theories, concepts, like discussing, analyzing, and criticizing or critiquing theories and concepts, or it could also be empirical research, but needs to be original and published, unpublished work. And if it's for the argument to be made in the paper, it needs to be substantiated by experimentation, simulation, theoretical development, or providing empirical evidence, analysis, or maybe there should be application in practice. A paper should be no more than 10 pages long, and that includes the title, abstract, but does not include references. The abstract should be no more than 200 words long. And for ASIS papers, appendices are not allowed. If the papers get accepted for the long paper category, the presentation time is about 15 minutes. And you also can choose whether or not you want to publish your final paper in the proceeding. The short papers, they are similar to long papers in terms of the topics, the scope, but they can also present or report work in progress. As it's a short paper, it should not be more than 4 pages long. And that also includes title and abstract, and does not include references. Again, appendices not allowed. And accepted short papers have about 10 minutes presentation time. And it's also optional for the authors to decide whether or not to publish the final paper in the proceeding. So here we have some instructions for how to submit the paper. The format is actually detailed, and you can find the template from the website. Tables, figures, other graphics should be embedded in a document. And this submission will be will go through the double-blind review process. So it needs to be anonymized. So it's very important that any author's names should not be included in the paper. And so make sure that you check that before you upload the submission for review. In terms of the name for the submission, we also have this specific requirement. And so you would have last initial of the first name, last name, and the initial of the first name, and then followed by the AM21 long paper. So Annie will talk about the evaluation from here.
Thanks. So I'm going to briefly go through the evaluation criteria. This is what the reviewers will see when they log into ConfTool. And I'm going to go through each of these criteria. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So the first criterion is originality. Does the submission contain any new or significant information and to justify its inclusion? And are the ideas presented in the submission innovative or creative? Next slide. This next criterion has to do with the theoretical framework and or methodology, and it's 10%. Does the submission utilize, build upon an appropriate base of theory or concepts? If the submission is empirical, then is the methodology appropriate and sound? Does it present new theory? Are the theoretical or empirical results accurately and adequately described? Next slide. So this next criterion has to do with implications for research practice and or society. It is, again, 10%. And in thinking about these, it's not that it needs to fulfill all of these criteria, but this is what the reviewers will see. Okay, next slide. The next two are clarity of submission and engagement. First, for clarity, is the submission well written? Engagement, please assess the interest level that you would expect from the audience. Next slide. Then the last criterion is 50%. Should the submission be considered for inclusion? How important is this work? What do you think that people will learn from reading the submission or seeing it presented and discussed? And then overall, consider your recommendation. Should the submission be accepted or rejected? Next slide. So those were the criteria. I'd also like to briefly show you what the past year's acceptance rates are for papers. And you know, as you consider these, obviously this has varied, and we can see that there's a difference in terms of the papers over the years. Some of the earlier conferences, we did not have these two different paper types, and in more recent years, we've had both the long paper and the short paper. But that's just for your reference purposes. Thank you. With that, I believe we're open for questions. Thanks.
I'll jump in and just make a comment, which is that we've found in recent years that the acceptance rate is also a function of how many papers are submitted in the first place. And we have heard that submissions overall this year, sort of across the board in associations, are down from prior years. So the submission or the acceptance rate by extension will probably be higher this year if we have less papers submitted. We're hoping that because this will be a both virtual and face-to-face annual meeting, so presenters will have the option of either attending in person or attending virtually and presenting virtually, that our submission rate should be relatively high, and that we know that now before we, as we put out the call for papers, whereas last year people were submitting on the assumption that we were still having a face-to-face meeting, and then the world changed. So we don't really know what the submission rate will look like, but we are seeing sort of in the world in general that they've been running lower than typical.
Lou, could you show that last slide again? Actually, so I did find the submission, acceptance rates interesting, Lydia, from, what you were saying. You can definitely see that trend with like the short papers and the long papers, that it is a function of what's being submitted to that particular category also. So I think that that's also worthwhile noting. That in some years, for example, we had fewer short papers, and in other years we had more short papers, and you can definitely see that the acceptance rate varies with that.
One other thing I'll toss out there is that if somebody submits a paper and it is not accepted, there's always the option to turn around and resubmit it as a poster. It has to be considerably shortened, obviously down to 2 pages. But if you want to get that research out there and have an opportunity to present at the meeting, then do not despair if your paper is not accepted, because poster acceptance rates run sort of between the 70s and the 80s typically. So the odds there are pretty good as well.
One of the attendees said it was a great presentation, very clear, so no questions from her. So maybe
Good to
we
hear.
won't
In
have
fact,
any
she's
further
left.
questions.
See, LZY, do you have any questions? And if not, I think we can probably stop the recording and post this online and everybody can watch it at their leisure.
Okay.
All right, Lou and Annie, any other final thoughts?
No, I think that sounds good to me.
Okay, well then we all get an early evening. All right, you guys, thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
participating, and we'll see you in a few weeks when the submissions start coming in.
Great.
Okay,
Thanks so
thanks.
much
All right.
for,
That's great.
for
Thank you,
your help.
everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Have a nice night.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.